start by, thank you. I just wanted to start by saying this is a big week. Okay, today Russia and China met to talk about weapons in Ukraine. I'm not really sure what the results of that meeting was, but our government obviously is warning them to not help drag this war out. We want an end of this. We do not want Ukrainians to have to settle for giving up their land. Another thing that's happening, the Fed meets this week. Also, the CEO of TikTok is testifying on the Hill. And of course, Donald Trump mentioned that he might be indicted. We could talk about this more when we come to the club business, but in my opinion, I think it's ignore it, not act upon it, not put our officers at more risk and people out in the street fighting over this issue. So my own personal stance is I'm going to pretty much ignore this and see what the Justice Department does and what the DA in New York does. The real big cases are what's happened in Georgia. I think that is a much bigger issue than the Stormy Daniels case, but we can talk about that later. The other thing I wanted to do is, hi Kyoko, nice to see you. The other thing I wanted to do is thank our past president, Ronald Lorenz. Ron has been a member for quite a long time. He's been entertaining us with his music and his wonderful band. We really appreciate that. And we thank you so much for your service, not only as the vice president and president last year, but your ongoing support and all of the joy that you bring this club. So thank you very much. I did make a cake in honor of thanking Ron and past membership. And after, I hope people please eat it. I do not want to take anything home. Last time I ate like 100 cupcakes. So. And then we're going to have a little change in the agenda. We're supposed to have Igor right now talk about Ukraine. He's coming in a little bit. He'll be here shortly. And I wanted to welcome Officer Graycar, who we saw the video last month. We spoke about the homeless liaison program in Livermore. We shared that video with you, but I wanted to invite him back to give his own presentation and then offer up questions. So if you can please welcome Officer Graycar from the Livermore Community.
All right, thank you very much. I'm Officer Graycar. This is my partner, Officer Paul Warkey. He joined the homeless liaison policing unit at Livermore PD this January, so I got a new partner. So I'm very excited. I've been in this position since January of 2020. I've been with Livermore Police Department 17 years. Before I got into this position, I didn't understand how much it would actually touch my heart and how rewarding of a position it would turn out to be. Yeah. But for 14 years, I worked predominantly graveyard shift, and so as a patrol officer, you're kind of putting out fires or maybe even getting them just down to smoldering at best. You can't quite solve the problem in its entirety during that shift or that call for that matter. I've been a field training officer. I was part of our force officer unit as a firearms for a number of years. I'm currently still a crime scene technician as a supplemental duty, but by and large, day in, day out, I'm a homeless liaison officer. And pretty much my days off too, because my phone never stops ringing. So patrol like you guys a lot. And we work Monday through Thursday, which is pretty cool. But it's not uncommon when we come in, on Monday, they say, your kids were doing this weekend, your kids are out of control, because they all refer to them as their kids. It truly kind of is a unique relationship that we have, because Paul and I are in a pretty cool spot to where we can actually take the time to get to understand our clients and what led to them being homeless, what their stories are individually, right? Because people claim this predicament for a number of reasons. Not everybody has substance abuse issues, not everybody has mental health issues, but obviously there is a large part that does. But we've had a lot of success, and believe it or not, COVID turned out to be a blessing in disguise. Now, this is gonna sound weird, but we had Project Room Key start during COVID. And we have Secret Ground Hotel in Livermore, right next to the outlets, brand new hotel, they've never been open. And they accepted the contract with the county. And at first, my old partner and I, we were like, you know, we have 300 homeless already. Are we gonna take in another 150 homeless from all over the county, the county program? And basically what it was for is for people that were homeless that had 9 pre-existing medical conditions that would cause them to be highly susceptible for contracting COVID or having a severe case as a result. And so we literally went to every single unsheltered person that we had in our city and interviewed them all basically, you know, to try and see who had some of these conditions, and then we linked them up with the medical professionals that did the exams and then eventually got them qualified. We ended up getting about 40 or so from Livermore into that program. But I'll tell you this, out of that program, every single person, with the exception of, I think, one, was housed at the end of that program. So it ended up, like I said, a blessing in disguise. During like the 2021 year, I think we had 85 or so unsheltered people in Livermore housed, which is like huge. And since then they've continued housing a lot of people, but we respond to a lot of transient nuisance complaints. There was a time at Livermore, our transient nuisance complaints were probably around 40–50% of our call volume. And also homelessness is not something that you can just arrest yourself out of, right? It's a very complex issue, and it requires sometimes a delicate approach to it, if you will. So Paul and I tend to be the carrot rather than the stick. There is enforcement that comes with it, but honestly, very rarely. Our job is primarily to engage our clients, to connect them to resources. We've been able to reconnect people that have been separated from family for decades. We've been able to identify, like recently we had a homeless veteran that was pretty much unable to, he was hardly surviving. I mean, outside of feeding himself, that was pretty much it. And it took a long time for him to even start talking to us. And it literally took us like getting down on our knee and talking to him. And one day I was like, what can I do? What is one thing I can do to improve your life? And he goes, I want a shirt. I was like, I want to be right back. So I went to one of our local churches that was hosting a shower ministry that day. Got some clean clothes from him. I raced back there and I gave it to him. He started talking more. And the more he talked, the more I get to know him, learn his name. And I was like, gosh, you know, it is that he has some criminal history, but I'm curious about that. So we started looking that up a little bit, and we saw back in 2017, he was arrested at the Livermore VA hospital. And if anyone knows what Livermore VA hospital is, it's way out there. I mean, way out there. That's not a spot where people just happen to show up. So what's my partner goes, gosh, I think he's a veteran. He goes, you think so? I'm like, I don't know. I mean, you have to be out there for a purpose, right? So we called our local nonprofit Source Out here, who we work with for our homeless veterans, that's helping vets. Gave me information. He's he's a 100% disabled combat vet. He suffered a traumatic brain injury from taking a round to his head in combat. And here he is, completely lost on the street. And this is somebody that is owed a lot by society in this country. And, you know, he was just, his family didn't know where he was. Nobody knew where he was. And we didn't even know who he was for the longest time, you know? So it's success stories like that. Or when you get to see somebody that's actually goes from complete despair, substance abuse, or just basically intoxicated beyond belief every single day to being sober by their choice, housed, working, and thriving, you know? And then having conversations with them when they actually say, I owe my success to you. And I'm like, I don't think so, but to hear that, it is pretty nice. So in that regard, it's kind of helped fill the heart tank, if you will, in this position. So, our truck, we drive a Ford F-150 patrol truck.
Okay.
And we're the only guys driving the truck, right? So generally, when our clients see us, they come to our truck. A regular patrol car, they tend to just, take off and run. So trust me, we know which kids have warrants and what's going on. And like I said, predominantly, unless it's something severe, it's kind of one of those things where we remind them of, hey, you need to go to court and take care of this kind of thing, versus trying just incarcerating. But we work with a lot of nonprofit organizations. Our probably first and best resource that we have is City Serve of the Tri-Valley. They're based out of the MSC building right behind Livermore TV. They service the entire Tri-Valley, Pleasanton, Dublin, and Livermore. They have contracts with all the cities. And they're a service navigator. So they take care of getting our unsheltered people document ready. They take care of getting them connected to other organizations. They get them connected to food stamps, DBT, that kind of stuff. And they'll take care of giving them clothes or a tent or a park or whatever it may be. But I'll tell you, every time I picked up that phone and I've called them, they've always been some kindness. You've got Tri-Valley Seek and Save. A lot of these organizations are faith-based, and I'm not by any means trying to push the faith-based thing, but just it tends to come with the territory. And Tri-Valley Seek and Save has been amazing. They helped us recently on an extremely hard case. Someone that had an opportunity at housing, but because of mental illness barriers, I would say, she just would not take that step. But Tri-Valley Seek and Save actually took it upon themselves to work with her and walk with her for a few days. They gave her a few days in a hotel to kind of stabilize her out. Needless to say, she's now living at that place and she's doing really well. And this is somebody that would probably cause numerous calls for service because she was kind of always in a manic state and very delusional. We tried connecting with family, that didn't work either, but now she is doing well, she's stabilized, and she's communicating with family again. And she hasn't done that for a number of years, so it's awesome. I can go on and on about those kind of things. I mean, we work with Abode, we work with Bax, we work with some other organizations. Yeah, we take care of calling Open Heart Kitchen and organizing food deliveries for our unsheltered clients that are out on the street, or even people that were maybe recently housed or temporarily put in a hotel, just so we know that we have food taken care of for them. Oh, the warming center is kind of like, it seems, so Livermore used to have the homeless refuge, but due to COVID, the homeless refuge was pretty much shut down. So we didn't have a warming center for a few years. And then just a few months ago, the warming center opened back up at the Livermore Veterans Hall. And so you have Don McKenzie, who started the Livermore Homeless Refuge years ago. He's there. And then they partnered with yeah, and then we also have someone from the county supervisor's office that's really involved with that too. So I don't necessarily know who's funding or what, but we've had some success. It gives at least some of our clients that want to go to that environment. Some people, believe it or not, even though it is warm and they do serve food and they have a nice safe place to sleep, choose not to go there for various reasons. But for the few people that it does meet, their criteria, it's been nice to know that we've had people out of the rain. It was extremely cold weather we've had. I mean,
Yeah.
for crying out loud, I had snow in my house a little more this year, so. But, and I tend to think about them on my days off too, and so when I'm sitting in my house and my power's off and my house is 40-something degrees, I can only imagine how it is out there for some of my clients too. So, yeah, the job is very rewarding. I do love it. But as far as mental health, we started talking about that. Obviously, there is a large component of our clientele that does suffer from some kind of mental illness or another. Sometimes it could be also in conjunction with substance abuse. But we take it a step further. We've been doing what's called IHOP referrals, which stands for in-home outpatient treatment. It sounds kind of funny because most of all of our clients are unsheltered, right? But basically, they'll assign an IHOP team. So you have mental health professionals that go out to the field. They do a 90-day evaluation on that subject to verify, to see what services they're best suited for. And sometimes those services are elevated to AOT, which is kind of like court-ordered mental health treatment. And sometimes it's just kind of like case management within the county. But we've had some success with that. But, you know, I'm sure most of you guys know that unless someone's really readily willing to take medicine or help, you can't force it upon them unless they're involuntarily hospitalized. And like we started talking earlier, we have 67 beds at John George, which most all of our homeless would go there because they're not Kaiser patients, so they go to John George. So that's pretty much the only resource that we have. We do have Cherry Hill for substance abuse. So if we have someone that wants a detox, or we have someone who's, you know, super intoxicated or whatever, much rather go to detox than go to jail. We try out there all the time. And that's generally like the first stepping stone too. If they want to go into a drug treatment program, they generally have to go through so many days of detox and quarantine before they get transferred to certain facilities. So we'll arrange that. Paul recently, I think, 2 weeks ago with our client in Sacramento. Yeah, I was about to do this. So like 3 weeks ago, we have a client that's been unhoused for a number of years, but she ended up getting in trouble out in Sacramento. And she didn't feel like she had a failure to appear out there. Well, the failure to appear was also on her D&D record. So it was preventing her from getting a copy of her photo ID, which is necessary to get her hooked up to certain services. They couldn't push her forward any further without that dang ID. So Paul actually worked with Tri-Valley City Serve and got her transported out there for her court date, and then arranged for her to stay at a shelter that evening after court, and then transferred back over to the Amtrak station the next morning and got her back to Livermore. So it kind of took a bunch of people, but that's kind of the lengths that we'll go to for our clients. Everyone's different, everyone's got their own needs, but we have the flexibility and the support within our department to do a lot of these things. So we're very fortunate. If you guys have any questions, we'd be happy to answer whatever questions you have.
And what we'll do here for folks on Zoom, if you could raise your hand. We did disable chat because if you try to chat with me privately, it will show on the screen here. So we're trying not to show your comments, but raise your hand if you have a question, and we'll take the first question over here in the front. Julie, I think Julie was the first one, right? Julie.
Hi, thank you for what you're doing. Really great work. I'm Julie Testa, and I'm Pleasanton City Council, and I'm very excited that we have our new alternative response unit that is up and running now, not fully staffed and everything yet, but we do have 2 clinicians. Now, do you have clinicians?
Not yet. It didn't work. So I believe that's all ironed out, and we have the funding for that. I think they're maybe like either in the application phase or close to application phase. I mean, that's how close we are. And initially, from what we were told, is the clinician once hired will be attached to Paul. And so what component we're really missing is when, say, like I do an IHOP referral, or we have someone placed on psychiatric attention, we need someone that practically follow up on that case and make sure they're not falling to the tax. Did the IHOP workers actually make contact with them? Because if they don't find them within a certain amount of days, they just close the case. Sometimes they call me, sometimes they don't. So it's really upon Paul and I to be on top of that stuff, on top of all the other stuff we're doing. So it's going to be nice to have a mental health clinician that can get past obviously a lot of barriers. We don't want, or we don't need to have access to people's medical records. That's not what we're about. But obviously having a mental health clinician that is in the know, be able to take care of a lot of that stuff and make sure people are being taken care of is going to be huge. And we're super excited about that. Right now we have the mobile crisis unit in Alameda County. Unfortunately, their office is based in Pkwy. So generally, unless we call them before 2 o'clock, they're not coming to Livermore. They want to make sure that they're back to Pkwy by 5 o'clock. So they're not going to come to us. That's also depending if they're not already on a call. I mean, they could be in Oakland doing something when we need to call them. So we have had the ability to, sit with somebody that is in crisis and kind of keep our distance. And we have a good enough rapport that we can kind of maintain that for a certain amount of time. And I've been on calls where I've been with that person for an hour until mobile crisis can come out and kind of work with them. And I'll tell you, having a mental health clinician write a psychiatric attention is a lot more powerful than little old officer Graycar on a form, doing the best I can, right? We've had more success that way than with me doing it. It seems like sometimes if we have a person that's in crisis, but for whatever reason, they need to get medically cleared because they've done drugs, or they drank alcohol, or they have some kind of injury, they have to get medically cleared prior to going to a mental health facility. So what that means is they get transported to Valley Care Hospital in Pleasanton. Valley Care Hospital then can't lower their level of care once they're admitted to the ER. So we can't just have them sent to John George and sit basically in the ER at John George. They have to wait till a physical bed is available, which takes upwards of 48 hours. So what ends up happening, and I don't know the ins and outs, so please, but what ends up happening is there's communication between the two hospitals and those doctors, and the person's released from the hold, and they don't ever get mental health services ever. And then so when we meet with our health workers, they're like, well, this person's never been placed on a hold. I'm like, yes, they have. I placed them on 5 myself, but because they never made it to the hospital, it doesn't show on a county database.
My question is that with you guys have, Livermore's had the IHOP program and you guys have been serving Livermore for quite a few years. For us, it's new, but when we got because it isn't just it really is the whole concept of the preventative response for crisis and the clinicians and all that. I was really hopeful that we would regionally work together. And I was told that we're really not doing that, and yet I just heard that Dublin has their new response team started. And so how much coordination is there? I worry about our vulnerable populations when they cross the city line and there's different stuff going on.
And so I can't speak to specifics on that, and that would definitely be a question better asked to my chief because he knows more. But I do recall him saying that he had worked with the other law enforcement agencies in the Valley, plus in Dublin, trying to make sure that when we got a program up like this, we have 24/7 coverage within the Valley, and basically trying to alternate our clinicians with the other cities. So that way we always had somebody that can help out and kind of sharing the duties, if you will. Now, logistics, I definitely don't know. But we have a really good working relationship with Pleasanton, like Officer Evans and Catalini, who are working with them. We're constantly talking to them. We have clients that tend to jump ship between cities. Some of ours go to Pleasanton, some come to Livermore, some come from Dublin. Likewise, sometimes you have other organizations that are serving the unsheltered community, let's say in Dublin, and they need help. We're putting that something property, and they're like, Livermore has to truck. So they'll call us, so they get contact with us, and so we've been helping them from time to time. So I think we have a great working relationship with those two agencies, in Alameda County. But as far as logistics, I would kind of doing that.
Thank you so much.
And I think we had time for one more question. I thought Mary over here raised her hand a minute ago. So I'm just going to check the screen, make sure there's no hands raised. So Mary, if you could go ahead and ask the last question.
Okay, well, the name's Mary.
Mhm.
And in the mid-80s, I worked in East Palo Alto when it had recently been declared the murder capital of the country. And I was working as a clinical social worker with many people who were probably part of the population that you deal with now. I worked with court-referred clients who came to a residential drug and alcohol facility for treatment, and they had to stay there because they were court referred. Now, what was unusual and what I would appreciate an update on is that in those days, many substance abuse recovery facilities would not allow medications for the mentally ill. You either were dry and stayed dry, or you left. So it was just beginning when I was there, and that was my job, to work with that population who were dually diagnosed with mental health and alcohol or other addictions. And there were beginning to be facilities around the Bay Area for that. What is the status of that now? And how do people blend the need for getting off of drugs and yet allowing medications? What is that you'll
I'm gonna answer this question the best I can, and I think our DA would be also really versed to answer the question, but unfortunately, we had a Prop 47 pass a number of years ago, which unfortunately, one of the things that happened, so we changed most of our drug violations from felony to misdemeanor. And so we don't transport people to jail for just simple possession and things like that. But with that, we lost Prop 36, which was like the court order drug treatment program aspect of it. It was much more advantageous for somebody to work a plea deal than to agree to go into a drug treatment program that's court ordered because it's just easier. They don't have something held over their head, whether they falter during that program, which can cause them to get re-incarcerated. So we lost a lot of that. Now, as far as medications when they're in a detox facility or another drug treatment facility, I don't know. I don't know about that. I know we have various medications that people are on, and when we get a third pill, if somebody has pre-existing medical conditions that require medication, they require us to get them medically cleared at Highland Hospital and get those prescriptions filled prior to them coming to the facility, like for accepting them. So I think that they're allowed to take medication based on the requirements that we've encountered. But yeah, Gavin Newsom started something this January where there's certain counties within the state that are a pilot program for kind of people that are chronically illness, that are substance abuse issues or mental health issues that are resistant to services. Having basically a homeless court where they can get court-ordered drug treatment or court-ordered mental health treatment. Alameda County does not fall in one of those pilot programs. So we don't have that in Alameda County as of yet. So we definitely do have a need for more substance abuse programs, because specifically most substance abuse programs are based on private insurance. None of our homeless have private insurance, you know, so there's very few that are just going to accept Medi-Cal, you know, or Medicaid or Medicare. So that's obviously a huge boundary that we face. Most of them do cater to the private insurance, so people that already have jobs and have insurance and or have the ability for families to fund their way because they're very expensive. So a lot of people just, you know, there's not as much availability to them. And if there is, they have to wait. So we had someone the other day, last week, and it happened really fast. I want to say like on Wednesday, you know, on the Wednesday before, he was like, I've got to get into detox. I'm done with this. I want to get off. I want to get back to my family. And we connected with CityServe. They made some phone calls from Center Point, and they found a bed for him at a local facility. And he was accepted on Tuesday. So that was a pretty fast turnaround for us. But that's like the fastest I've ever seen. You know, so somebody, when they're at that point, it's like you want to take advantage of it. When they're at that point where they're really ready just to get in and get the help, that's when you need to get in to help. So that window can be very small. Because you have an opportunity to
Thank you. And thank you for what you do. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Did you want to say
I
something?
just wanted to make a general overall comment that both Officer Graycar and Paul have a unique set of personality characteristics that's really quite impressive. And as a clinician, is something that I find is really wonderful, and that we're lucky in this area and Livermore to have people that have such a unique combination of big heart, traditional police skills, and the ability to communicate and come across with such honesty and integrity. So thank you two gentlemen for doing wonderful work.
I appreciate that.
And please feel free to have something to eat for you guys. Okay, as Roman. Okay, next up, we've seen her go through, 3 other candidates, one, she was the winner of the primary. We're, going into the DA race, and Pamela won the election as first African-American district attorney. All of these things, we're looking forward to what Pamela is going to be doing. And so you do have a presentation. I'm gonna let you speak for yourself because I'm no good at this. Come on up, Pamela. Good evening. Good evening. Thank you for having me, Jack.
Let me get this PowerPoint up real quick. Thank you.
On the ground, in the state office. Now the guardian.
Would you like to drive?
Decision making power. That's at the heart of what we do. We make decisions about who gets charged, what the charges are, what the sentence will be, whether they'll get a plea bargain or a trial. It's all about making decisions throughout the process. And so we decide what cases are dismissed or diverted. We have a great deal of input from every aspect of the process. Okay? So how?
Oh, did I? This is slide 2.
That's slide 2, yeah, go to slide 3. Your usually.
Okay. That's because I'm not. Sorry about this. Presenter view slideshow. Sorry, it's doing it through the share kind of messed me up. There we go.
The mission of the district attorney's office is to establish free, and to enhance an ethical and equitable system of justice. I won't read the whole thing, but we do have a mission statement. Okay.
Sorry, Pamela. You guys, remember I have one speaker here, so it's picking up all the back conversations as well. So thank you.
We also have a mandate, yeah.
Yeah, the slideshow is not showing at all now. It was prior to the last adjustment you made.
For the people on the Zoom.
Can you see it?
Can you please speak through the microphone? We're having a hard time hearing through Zoom.
Yeah,
Okay.
you can't hear.
Where is the microphone?
It's right here. It's on my computer.
Oh, okay. But what about the people?
Computer by the, put the computer, can we put it on the podium? And maybe if it doesn't reach, we can pull the podium closer. There you go, that's it. You know all that stuff.
Oh, because they can see. This is my camera. Go ahead, go ahead. They can see that. Can you guys see the presentation on Zoom?
Yes.
Okay,
Oh, good, okay.
okay.
So the mandate comes from the Constitution, which people don't realize. The district attorney's duties and responsibilities and the power of the office comes from the Constitution and the state legislature, not the board of supervisors or anybody in the county. And so we are essentially not only equal to, but greater than the board of supervisors. Our budget comes through them, but actually our duties, the responsibility does not depend upon them, and they have no authority to dictate how we perform. So it talks about the codes and our case law, and we have both criminal prosecution units, which I'll talk about, and civil and commercial litigation unit as well, that involves consumers, workers, real estate, and environmental matters. And now we're actually addressing tenant matters as well within the context of real estate, which is a new expansion of our responsibility. We're the stewards for the racial justice and the criminal justice system under the Racial Justice Act, which was passed by the state legislature and mandates that we ensure that racism is essentially eliminated in the criminal justice system, whether it's in the jury selection, in witnesses, mainly expert witnesses, in the entire administration of justice. We are now responsible for making sure that our that equity and fairness is actually part of the system. And we also serve as the legal advisor to the grand jury. And our next mandate, another big part of our mandate is the Victim Witness Assistance Program, which to me is the heart and soul of the office, because we have about a division of about 40 people, and they are the people that go to court with victims, that support witnesses. They are really our first line of connection to the community. They're the ones that are out there when there's a homicide, when there's a crime. Somebody is entitled not only to financial compensation, which you are, if you're a victim of crime, you can file a request for compensation through the state. It goes through our office. We process claims, but we also make sure that people receive grief counseling, for example, or emotional counseling. I've directed the advocates, we need to focus on children, because we know when children are observing violence and dysfunctionality, that often that has an impact on them growing up. And so it's a way for, to me, it's a way for us to interrupt cycles of violence and exploitation. And so we really are emphasizing what resources do our advocates need, what training do they need, and how do we support them. We conducted the first ever in-depth survey of all the victim advocates by a new interim director of the Victim Witness Advocate Division. She interviews every advocate individually and asks them, what do you need to do your job? How are you doing your job? What is the impact on the work that you're doing on you personally? She herself is a seasoned victim witness advocate. And so she's very victim-centered and very much an advocate for her advocates. And we were able to take the information that she got from that survey and begin to provide them with greater support and resources. And we're hoping to both enhance and improve the services that we provide from the office. And so they're trained to offer trauma-informed and compassionate support to crime victim survivors, victims of, and now we've expanded to include victims of police violence and emphasize certain children who have been exposed to or experienced traumatic. Okay, we have 9 locations across the county, in case you did not know this. We have the Renee C. Davidson Courthouse, which is often referred to as RCD. We have the Wiley Manning Courthouse in Oakland. We have East County Hall of Justice, XOJ and W, Fremont Hall of Justice. Those are the 4 courthouses where we support prosecutions and people impacted by the criminal justice system. But we also have Calico, which is used for child abuse and abduction cases. The Consumer Environmental and Worker Protection Division is housed in East Oakland. The Juvenile Justice Center is in San Leandro. Our victim and witness assistance, they have their own office in downtown Oakland, and the Family Justice Center as well. So this is our history, and I'll talk a little bit about that. I've been telling people about the last 100 years of the DA's office. 2023, if you go back to 1923, and you start even before Earl Warren, he came in 1925. Before him, there was a man named Ezra Dakota, who was there from, he was the DA in 1923, and then he left and Earl Warren took over. And Earl Warren was appointed by the Board of Supervisors through a vote of the Board of Supervisors. Every person after that came through the Board of Supervisors. And so I'm the first non-anointed, non-appointed district attorney. Basically, all of these people were chief deputies who were either appointed by the Board of Supervisors or they ran unopposed. Tom Orloff served 4 terms. He ran unopposed. And Pamela ran 3 times unopposed, 2 times unopposed. But it goes all the way back for 100 years. And so understand that when I am now in this seat, I'm the first person outside this office in 100 years. Office has not seen change in over 50 years. There's a quote from John Meehan. He was asked when he became district attorney, when he was about to be appointed, what would you change in 1981? And he said, absolutely nothing. Okay, so he's going all the way back to 1925. So this is the legacy of the office. Next. Our transformation is in the making. This first year we have a theme, and it is printed on the back of every VA employee's card. That there comes a point where we need to stop just pulling people out of the river. We need to go upstream and find out why they're falling in. We put that on the back of everyone's card so that they realize we're not just pulling people out of the river. I have told, we've hired 35 people in 2 months. Wow. And I have told them, I'm hiring you to change lives and not destroy. That is the mission. And we've asked everyone, you don't have to be committed to this, but just understand this is the direction that we are going. Next. Oh, there I am. Diane endorsed me. I'm graduate of Yale Berkeley Law School, so I have a little bit of an education. Survivor of the Ohio Juvenile Justice and Foster Care System. I'm the first foster kid to be district attorney. And in many ways.
Wow.
I've had a great legal career, arguing cases, representing victims, and had a breadth of management experience that has served me well as I have stepped into this role and trying to manage this organization of 450. So, next. Our leadership team. We have my chief assistant, Otis Bruce Jr. I have 2 chief assistants. Otis Bruce Jr. is a 32-year prosecutor who came to us from Marin County. Royal Roberts is a longtime administrator who worked for the Martin Luther King Freedom Center as their operations director. And he was the chief counsel at Peralta Community College District, as well as having served as chief of staff there and many years as an administrator there. A policy director, Cynthia Chandler, who is a longtime seasoned civil rights lawyer who also was working from the Alameda County Bar Association. She founded the Bay Area Legal Incubator organization as part of the bar, helping to birth new law firms and giving lawyers support. She is a master of innovation and thinking about things. Our Civil Rights Bureau chief is Pavan Malou, a veteran lawyer from the public defender side. Our Gender Justice Bureau chief is Annie Esposito, long-term employee of the Alameda County District Attorney's Office. Our Consumer and Civil Justice Bureau chief is Simona Freese Best, an award-winning longtime seasoned, consumer lawyer. Has one of the largest verdicts in the history of the state of California on behalf of consumers. Victim witness, survivor witness services director Christina Molina, longtime advocate for victims. My inspector bureau is headed up by Chief Eric Lewis, who was with the Oakland Police Department for 30 years. I recruited him out of retirement. And my community support bureau manager for interim is Antoine Ford, longtime community activist out of Richmond, Contra Costa County, who I heard the presentation and the questions. Antoine has sat for the last 10 years on Contra Costa County's alcohol and other drugs commission. And talks a lot about drug diagnosis, which is very important. And I can talk about that a little bit because I've talked to him many days. Next.
Okay.
So we are realigning, reorganizing the office again, 83 years, just been operating the same way, a lot of silos and pockets and things that don't make sense. When you come into an organization, you say, well, why are you doing it like that? And they said, well, we've always done it. We've always done it. And so we're breaking things up, but also trying to put them back together in a way that makes sense. So this is my vision for the structure of the Criminal Prosecution Bureau, which includes the locations where we actually prosecute, consumer justice, gender justice, because we know that unfortunately in this county, as in many places, people are victimized over and over and over again based on their gender. And so we are prepared to bring together all of the different initiatives that have come out of the DA's office in recent years: human trafficking, sexual assault, the Family Justice Center, domestic violence. All of those things have been operating in a silo, and they need to come together, and they are. Annie Esposito has graciously agreed to head this bureau up as we create and expand the whole concept of gender justice. Our Civil Rights Bureau includes not only the Public Accountability Unit, it includes a Restorative Justice Unit and the Racial Justice Act Unit, which we recruited a longtime attorney, Damaris Evans, is heading that up. Community Support Bureau, the Victim Witness Advocates, and all the services that we really want to make sure that we're providing from the DA's office. We have something called the CARES Navigation Center, which these gentlemen earlier didn't mention, but we're looking at how is that effective. We see in other communities, and I've met with the chiefs of police where they talk about it's not enough to have one place where you're trying to take people. The trend now really is to have mobile crisis units. And the county hasn't gotten that message yet, but we have an opportunity to take what is now a brick and mortar operation and was set up that way before COVID and has not really served the county well. And how do we begin to reframe that? So we're working on that. Our collateral courts, when I got there were approximately 14 courts that they considered to be collateral courts, staffed by 2 lawyers. 2 lawyers. Out of the whole organization, out of 150 lawyers, 2 lawyers. Staff 14 collateral courts, veterans court, youth court, girls court, mental health court, just behavioral health court. Please wait. I mean, all these names on a chart that had 2 people managing. We immediately increased that number from 2 to 8. I assigned 2 mental health clinicians because there were no mental health clinicians associated with our mental health courts. And we assigned 1 deputy. I assigned a team to reorganize this thing. And there was, the team identified approximately 37 people, and Julie will appreciate this, 37 people sitting in Santa Rita County Jail, identified as incompetent and fraud. We have 2 years to restore them with competency, and they've been sitting there for months, longer than a year, not receiving any services. No one making any effort to restore them with competency. No one making any effort to get them to a place where they could get mental health. we assigned one deputy, and I didn't do it. My team said, I moved the guy over there, and then the team said, he is the guy we're going to assign. Kevin Akuma went in and said, Kevin, you do it. Kevin has now placed 17 people. From into, because they found a facility that had 26 open beds that we were not using.
Wow.
That we were not using. And so, you know, we got 10 more people in the pipeline that we're trying to get out of the facility. They're just sitting. But it just took one person to say, okay, this is what you're going to do. And you know, like I said, the team decided this is what Kevin should do. One of my leadership people came in, introduced me, said, this is Kevin, I think he's good, let's put him in collateral court. I did that, and then they ran. So we've got a great team working on putting those courts, making them function. Not just something on paper. The Youth Justice Bureau, we're trying to catch up to where Alameda County is with respect to young people. And Harrisburg jails last, the task force, the things that have already been put into motion, we're trying to catch on to those. As well as deal with the secure track facility that they tell me is pretty awful. My head of juvenile is like, they need to do something, that's gonna be a crisis if you know how. So we're working on that. We have our Administrative Services Bureau, the GA's office has 75 inspectors assigned to it. They are armed police officers. I am honored to be accompanied now everywhere. 24 years with the police department. As mentioned, my chief, Eric Lewis, did 30 years with the but they have 75 officers, basically, that we have to deploy across the county that can do investigations, that can follow up on cases. Earl Warren created it in 1930, before he left in 1938. It's one of the few offices that has that as an actual division. And then we have a communications bureau that's trying to keep up with all the things that are happening. Today, I'm featured in the Washington Post newspaper. Next week, I'll be in the New York Times. You know, across the country, I happen to be the slaver of the week, so that's how I feel. Next. So here's our office, 150 lawyers, 75 inspectors, 35 advocates, and operations staff, 130 people across 9 locations around the county. I met with the chief of Fremont Police this morning and his chief deputy, and we acknowledge that Fremont is the second largest city in Alameda County, and yet most people don't know that. And when I talk about trying to provide service through this organization to the community, a lot of times it's focused on North County. And it doesn't trickle down, it's just South County. So I definitely am aware of that, and I'm working to fix that for sure. Next. More than 40,000 cases a year are presented to us for charging by police and other law enforcement agencies. There's 19 law enforcement agencies across the counties that operate here, including BART, Cal Berkeley, Cal State Bay, CHP, a lot of different organizations that we work with, law enforcement agencies across. Okay? And the state, we get cases from DOJ as well.
Next.
Yep. So our Criminal Prosecution Bureau handles everything with 4 courthouses in Oakland, Dublin, and Fremont. Next. Our Civil Rights Bureau has the Public Accountability Unit. We've got a lot of media attention. It's tasked with holding law enforcement and public officials accountable for misconduct. That's new in this county. Okay, hasn't been happening. Earl Warren, in fact, though, was focused on addressing police misconduct when he was here. His successor, there are 2 people after him. One of them was J. Frank Pkwy. He prosecuted 2 deputies for beating somebody to death. It is not a strange thing for us to hold police accountable. We just seem to have forgotten it in more recent times. So our Civil Rights Bureau is going to focus on promoting restorative justice, enforcing the Racial Justice Act, and resentencing cases. We do have a mandate under state law to resentence people either who went to jail as juveniles and were tried as adults. They are automatically eligible for resentencing, as well as people who we would traditionally consider compassionate release, where they've been, they've done 30, 40 years of incarceration, and they're no longer a danger to public safety, so they have an opportunity to request resentencing. They get evaluated by our office. We receive these petitions, and so we have a unit that has to be responsible for that. Along with the Racial Justice Act, which mandates or authorizes people on death row or who have received severe sentences, the 3 strikes folks, if they can establish that their sentencing or their conviction or some aspect of their prosecution was tainted with racial bias, they're entitled to those. And unfortunately, in Alameda County, that's a lot of people. So we have someone that is heading up that work. Next. So yeah, the advocates that talked about, they're great. I mean, they're our first line of communication and support to people. But they take on a lot of the trauma themselves because they're holding people's hands at their worst moment in time. And so we spent a lot of energy in this first 60 days, making sure that we understand what do the advocates need, how are they functioning, and how can we make it better? And looking to expand that service. You're eligible, if you're a victim of crime, you're eligible for most services through the state of California, but that has to come through our office. It's Marcy's Law, which requires us the act requires us to protect the legal rights of victims in this county. So meaning you have a right to know when you're going, if you're the person who did you harm is going to go to court, if the court date is changed, if there's a change in any part of the prosecution. And so as we go through where we're reviewing cases, every time we ask, what does the victim say? How can we, what is necessary for us to meet with the victim? And we're finding, unfortunately, there are times where this office they don't know where the victims are, they can't find the victims. People haven't gotten their services. So I've learned to ask every time, particularly where there is a child who is involved. What did we do for that child? And I have to have people that have to say, oh, I'm gonna have to get back to you. Okay, so we're really trying to make sure that our services are being comprehensively provided across the board. And it's a challenge. But we're hiring, so we are hiring, our number one priority right now is hiring victim witness advocates. If you know anyone, if we need someone, we need more than someone. We need people who speak Mandarin or Cantonese or Hmong. That's what they need. Okay. The Family Justice Center, you all may have heard about this. It's very popular in Oakland. It provides resources and supportive services to survivors in all these different categories: human trafficking, elder independence, child abuse and abduction, sexual assault and exploitation, domestic violence and stalking. These things are happening, unfortunately, across. Next. The Care Navigation Center. Most people are not really familiar where it is. It's 3315 International Boulevard. It is a place that's similar to what the officers were talking about, where there's an effort to get people to de-escalate, to navigate them to services so that they don't end up in Santa Rita or John York. There are licensed. It's a contract that my office and behavioral health services have, and there's sometimes there's licensed clinicians there. We need to have more. It's not appropriately staffed, quite frankly, and we've had to look at the contract and the way that it is, those services are being delivered. And we have looked at it, as I said, based on the feedback I've gotten from the chiefs. The challenge is that it is voluntary. It is not well publicized. People don't always want to get in the back of a patrol car to go anywhere if they haven't been actually detained, because this is pre-arrest divergence. Okay, you're not really supposed to be, you're not under arrest if you say, I want to go to the Terrorism Navigation Center. It's supposed to be avoided. But if you gotta get in the back of a police car, that could be, that's a barrier, right? If an officer, I talked to the chief in Dublin, he said, well, we have to bring people to Oakland, my officer's gotta drive all the way to Oakland, drop somebody off, then they gotta fit all the way back. That's an expenditure of time and resources on behalf of the office. So it's not really functional, right? It doesn't, there's a lot of barriers with having this place-based, so we're looking at how to better deliver those services. Next. This is our little thing. Our site is alcoholda.org, and there we are on the computer, and I think that's it.
Hey,
Okay.
thank you.
So,
And we'll open it up for questions, and I'm just gonna check the screen here. I think that they had some sound issues.
oh no.
Well, I think it's because it's using the speaker on my computer in order to loop into the system that we have here in the hall. So we'll try to speak up. What, pardon me?
Uh-oh.
Oops.
Right here.
Uh,
You can hear, I hope you can see the presentation.
we will go ahead and share the presentation as well, Pamela, and I'll do my best with editing the audio and when we are recording. So we'll try to fix up that sound for you. I apologize.
We can boost the volume after we finish doing the recording.
Okay.
So questions, Ellis?
When Nancy O'Malley spoke to us several years ago, he said there was a lobbying group within the DA's office that lobbies the legislature for particular legislation. I didn't pick that up when you were going through your organization chart. The other thing is, I know that when Dinah Becton became DA in Contra Costa, she immediately hired PR people, public relations people, and that served her well. Have you got something similar going in Alameda County?
Yeah, the latter part, we have a communications bureau, so there were, I believe, when we got there were 3 people there. We hired 1 person and now we're getting ready to hire 2 more. There's a newsletter that went out today that we've been trying to figure out who it's going to. So, I mean, there's a lot of improvement. There's folks that have been there, but we're definitely ramping that up and needing to recognize it. It needs a lot of tender loving care. I hate to tell you, but the way my chief describes it is that it's almost as if Miss O'Malley threw me the keys and walked out the door and said, got it, okay. I had 28 people on my transition team, and we had work groups for law enforcement, for communication, for victim services, for mental health. We had a lot of folks that were from around the county that were committed to trying to make sure that we transitioned well into the office. My predecessor had 4 people. Herself, Terry Wiley, who we ran against, Chief Chu, the chief of inspectors, and the finance director. And we got no information before we entered. So if there was a lobbying group, it's not on any documentation that was provided to me.
That's amazing, because she really stressed that they were able to put pressure on members of state legislature and get stuff passed. And just,
I haven't seen it. We asked for reports. In November, we asked for every major unit within the office, we asked to receive a report with specific questions for each of the units. What are your priorities? What have you been doing? What are your challenges? We got those reports, some of them on December 30th, 3 days before I was sworn in. And then we got the rest of them after I got there. And so, yeah, the office was not prepared for the transition. We found talk about the communication. We found the communication department, they had, those employees still thought they reported to someone who had left the building. We found pockets of people who didn't know who their supervisor, or didn't know that their supervisor had left the office. We found contracts that have not been approved by the board of supervisors that we had to void. We found a lot of stuff. When you, it's like opening the hood and you see, oh, that car looked nice on the outside. But not really. Yes.
For the victim services, how is all of the care that you're providing coordinate with the county?
It doesn't. The DA's office
Pamela,
operated.
can you repeat the question just in case they didn't pick it
Okay.
up on the?
The question was how, for the victim services, how does that operate with respect to the county? The DA's office operates totally independent of the county. What I started at the beginning, we are constitutional empowered by the legislature. The county basically funds the office. They, prior to me coming, they had no information about the human resources, the operations literally of the office, the victim advocates. I mean, we found the victim advocates were forced to use their personal telephone for the services that they provide. So I purchased cell phones for each of the victim advocates. The county did not, and when I met with the county administrator, she said, basically, we give you your money and you go do whatever you want to do. There's no coordination at all.
Do you think that your services would be more robust if you had some coordination with the county?
With respect to victim witness advocates, perhaps not, because their job is so specific to really dealing with people who are deemed to be victims or witnesses associated with the criminal prosecution. Outside of that, like we are collaborators with the probation department on reentry services, which we now need to make sure we're providing, or we have a hand in, because we're resentencing people. And if we're bringing people home, we need to make sure that they're being reintegrated safely and properly into the community. I'm very aware that there's a 61% recidivism rate just under normal circumstances. We're not going to do that. We have to improve our recidivism rate, and we have the opportunity because we're dealing with each person one by one to say, what is your reentry plan? And how is it going to be implemented? And who's holding you accountable to that? So we're able to do that. We have yet to we need to do more coordination with probation on that level. I have met with the head of behavioral health services and said, okay, how do we collaborate? We've got this terrorist navigation center that we're both funding. And somebody needs to hold them accountable. And in my meeting with her, I said, these are the questions we're asking. We funded that program to the tune of $600,000 over the last 3 years, since 2019. How many people have been served? 6. 6. And I told her, we're asking questions about how this program is being implemented. And she said to me, those are good questions. Okay, nobody was asking those questions. So the county is moving, as I met with the supervisors, what I've been told, the county is moving more towards what they consider performance-based accountability. And that's what we're trying to make sure we are at the heart of it. In terms of the vendors and the contracts that we're finding that, we're assessing them, all of them. And some of them, like I said, we've had to terminate some contracts because we couldn't see why are we giving you $750,000? What are we getting for our money? And the answer was not enough.
Other questions? Do we have anything from the floor here? Let me just check. There is. Okay, just a thank you. Any other questions? Oh, yes, we have another question. Go ahead.
Yes.
I'm trying to do it to the mic.
Yeah.
So we continue to see, on Nextdoor and in the news and on social media, some pretty relentless attacks on you.
Yes.
And what should we all be doing to support you?
Sure. Talking as much as you can, these types of gatherings are very helpful. People should understand, as I've said to you, I'm the first person to come into this office from outside the office in 100 years. This is like a giant ocean line that's been going one way, and they've been absolutely comfortable going that way. People have fallen into patterns that are unhealthy and unhelpful to this community. And so someone comes in and I'm looking, saying, this is not how you operate a law firm. This is not what you do. Folks who have participated, prospered, and profited in that system are very uncomfortable. And they're gonna, we did say that we were changing the status quo. And it is so important to understand that there are people who were invested in this broken system. There's no question it's broken. Talking to the victim advocates, it's broken. Talking to victims, I meet with them, it's broken. Talking to even the lawyers who have been feeling understaffed, underappreciated, even though they're highly paid, more so than everybody else in the office, but it's not working. And people were afraid to speak up and speak out. And now those who were comfortable with that are not comfortable. And I'm okay with that, because I would rather that people come into it who are willing to do the work, who are committed to making the office better, than people who are unhappy about that. And I'm okay with that. If you want to go work for that, that's fine, good. Helps my budget. And I think just helping people be thoughtful about the critiques that they hear. For instance, on Nextdoor, you mentioned. Somebody put it on Nextdoor that I bought television sets for all the inmates at Santa Rita. Why would I spend my budget on television sets? If I can confirm that that's the truth. People say make no sense. And I think that's just the message that my supporters need to say to people. Let's use your common sense. Let's think about it. And trust me, within the county, when I meet with the supervisors, even those who supported my opponent, they say, oh, of course there's going to be a shakeup there. You're the first person who's made any changes in 50 years. So of course people are going to be upset and uncomfortable. But just ask folks, it's going to take us some time. We're building the organization from the inside. We really are. My focus primarily has been on working with the people inside the office. Why? Because I know culture eats policy for lunch. So I'm working on the culture.
And another question from Julie, and I believe this will be the last question.
Okay. Madam DA, thank you so much for inviting me to be on your new mental health commission. It's an honor to serve there. We've had 2 meetings so far, and I want everyone to hear the presentation that we had at a recent meeting was amazing to hear in such a short period of time, changes that are already happening and clinicians being hired. I absolutely have, I'm also on the board of NAMI, National Alliance of Mental Illness. And so I've had a lot of interaction with individuals with mental health issues that have been involved in the justice system. The system was broken, and that so much is being done to really alternatives to incarceration. I mean, it's real, it was needed, and it's being done. One of the things that I really want you to hear is 2 years ago, one of the lawyers in the office had shared with me because I was frustrated with how the system was broken and had shared, Julie, I recommend hundreds of clients to mental health court. Less than 3 have been referred. The resources aren't there. And so I called that individual up after the last meeting that I went to, where there was a presentation of all of the change and hires that are happening in the DA's office. And that person said, truly, it's true, good things are happening. And they've been happening in the past. So thank you.
I mean, I don't, they keep me off Twitter now. It's too many people, but when I look at what's from San Francisco, they stay over there. The people of Alameda County are ready for change. I made promises in my campaign, and I intend to keep those promises. I will hold law enforcement and public officials accountable. I will implement the criminal justice reforms that we have voted for overwhelmingly since 2012, 2014, 2016, 2018, and then the legislature has changed the law. I met with the chief of Fremont Police this morning. We talked about the standard for use of force is different now. One of my one of my advocates said to me today that someone said to her, if you took a doctor 50 years ago and put him in a hospital today, he would be completely amazed at how everything has changed. If you took a lawyer from 50 years ago who was in Alameda County, he would be amazed at how he's changed, but he still could walk into a courtroom and practice law the same way that it was practiced 50 years ago. That's very telling. So we have a lot of work to do. Thank you all for having me.
Thank you, Pamela. Thank you. It was such an honor. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We're just gonna make a quick little adjustment here on the camera and before our next speaker, which will be Igor. Get this a little closer. In 1 month since the Russians invaded Ukraine. And here to give us an update on the status and fundraising status, I want everybody to welcome Igor Tregub. And you might want to come around this way so we don't knock out the cable again.
All right, well, thank you so much. Before we start, just want to say it's a really tough act to follow. And I want to recognize that the Alameda County Democratic Party Central Committee brings you our best and brightest, not the least of them being our DA, Pamela Price, who is a member of our body. So let's give her another round of applause. It is an honor to come before you today because what you do every day is so critical. See, you are one of just a couple of dozen Democratic clubs that are the lifeblood of our Democratic Party. And the Tri-Valley Democratic Club, by doing what you do, you are advancing democracy. Small d democracy, as well as big D Democratic Party building every day. So thank you so much. And I'm excited to give you and I know I was asked to talk about 2 things. Advancing democracy at home, which is what we're trying to do through the Democratic Party, and defending it abroad. And that's the work on Ukraine. Just wanted to give you a brief update on how things are going with the Democratic Party here. Earlier today, I am proud to say that we have appointed all the members that we have spots available for to represent us at the California Democratic Party later in a couple of months at their first in-person convention, I believe, since the pandemic started, so since 2019. And I'm proud to say that the Tri-Valley Democratic Club is one, AD 16 actually, over in Alameda County. We are, this is the first time, I think, in many years that every spot, every delegate spot, every alternate spot, every associate spot, and the club rep spot that this club is entitled to, being a member of our central committee, has been filled. There are no vacancies. We are fully represented. And I'm also excited to share with you that just a couple of weeks ago, I have completed the committee appointment process. This time around, there are about a dozen committees, and they span the gamut from doing the infrastructure work, including rebuilding our aging website, which unfortunately right now is down, but that's okay because we are rebuilding it from scratch right now. We have an amazing team in place to do that. To doing the work that we have a moral obligation to do, the work of voter registration, the work of going to communities, particularly communities that have been for a long time underserved and underrepresented, and frankly have not heard from our party enough or at all, and asking, how can we be of service? So we have a brand new committee that is just getting off the ground this month, and it's going to be working on building the infrastructure, doing voter registration. A few months ago, I was at a mutual aid event hosted by the Ella Baker Center in Oakland. And I was talking to them, and like, we're looking for folks to do voter registration. And it's like, this is going to be amazing. We should have been here a long time ago. We should be doing this now. This is finally starting to happen. The work that you do in AD 16 is so important, because it wasn't that long ago that this area was represented by Republicans, and we are the Democratic Party. So thank you for continuing to keep the momentum going. And if there's anything that the party can do to support the work that you all are doing, I would love to hear your thoughts and ideas. On the front of defending democracy abroad from the forces of tyranny, here we are, a year and a couple of weeks after the February 24th, 2022 invasion. And while this has been a very difficult 385 days, but who's counting, I guess, Ukraine is still here. And that is in large part thanks to the work that you all have done to contribute to this cause. Over the past year, I have been extremely privileged to be in a position to work with each and every one of you to continue raising money for relief, resistance, and resettlement efforts. At this time, we have raised nearly $100,000 with, thank you. We have our latest fundraiser, which has been going on for a few weeks. We have exceeded our $10,000 goal. We have set a new goal of 12.5K. We are about $400 shy, maybe a little less, of exceeding that goal. And with your help, if the spirit moves you, and if you are in a place where you can contribute whatever is comfortable for you, we can break that goal yet again. I will give you the link to our latest fundraiser. It's bit.ly, bit.ly/rebuilding Ukraine, bit.ly/rebuilding Ukraine. In addition, and I wish that I just unfortunately forgot to bring a couple of examples of this, but Alameda County and Contra Costa County recently had the 6th and 7th respective jurisdictions in each of those counties that passed a resolution this year reaffirming support and solidarity for the democratic, indivisible nation of Ukraine and the courageous, peace-loving people of Ukraine. And that includes the Contra Costa County Board of Supervisors. So I see a few council members in the room. If you would like to do a resolution like that or a proclamation, I'm happy to provide the language for that. And all of those proclamations are going directly to the Consul General of Ukraine, who is so thankful and has asked me to talk about the gratitude that he has in his heart, that the people of Ukraine have in their hearts for every one of these proclamations. It may seem symbolic, but every proclamation, just like every dollar raised and every petition signed, every meeting with our local congressperson, thankfully, the congressional representatives we have here have been solid supporters of Ukraine. I wish that that was the case all over the nation, but every meeting with a congressional rep is one step closer to victory. Victory of democracy over tyranny. Victory of light over darkness. And victory of the Ukrainian people who are fighting as we speak to make sure that the whole world is able to have systems in place that allow for self-determination. And frankly, that big but ultimately small-minded bullies propped up by oil and gas like Vladimir Putin do not have their way. So thank you so much for everything that you're doing. Next month, I will be heading to the Hill in DC for the second time in 6 months to meet with our congressional delegation and others to continue to advocate for the cause of Ukraine. But the work that you're doing is so important. And I wanted to just share with you one new project that I'm now working on. And what better location to talk about this than the IBEW meeting hall. We're working on a project called Shine Bright Ukraine. We're working to deliver renewable power units like solar panels and battery storage to the people of Ukraine so that they are able to have their own independent power that does not rely on a Soviet era grid that has been deliberately attacked by Russian forces. And I know that my siblings in IBEW certainly have the know-how to ensure that there is power that we have here and that we have abroad. If you have access to capital, if you have access to supply chains, or if you would just like to get involved and are not sure how yet, I will be available. I am happy to talk with you more and get you plugged in, no pun intended, plugged in. if you're on Zoom, I'll drop my email in the chat. You can contact me at, my email is itregub@gmail.com. And I would love to work with you on this project. Thank you so much. I'm happy to answer any questions, and just as importantly, I'd love to hear your ideas about either the Ukraine projects I'm continuing to work on along with all of you, or how we can continue to build our Democratic Party, continue to build our Democratic Party into a force to be reckoned with, especially here in AG 16. Ellis.
When I first heard about you raising money, you told us that you were getting the money to the people on the ground. This was like a year ago or so. Tell us what the money was used for and what that whole mechanism is. Give us a picture of that, please.
Yeah, thank you so much. So there have been so many fundraisers that we have now done, and some of them have included things that cost money. But there are also some things I want to recognize. I'm in the process of, with the help of Director Chris Peoples on the AC Transit Board, we're working to try to repurpose decommissioned or about to be decommissioned AC Transit buses so that they can have a second mission in Ukraine. And if you are have any connections to shippers or other supply chain mechanisms, would love to talk with you about that. But just in terms of the $95,000 that has been raised, every penny of it has gone on the ground. I know for a fact, just based on, because the Ukrainian people, the thing is, it's such a testament to their resiliency. Even when rockets are literally flying overhead, they're sending me receipts on Instagram of the things that the funding we get them go to fund. And it has funded humanitarian relief, food, water, medicine. It has funded transport to get that kind of relief into some of the hardest to access areas that are currently under siege. Some of that money has gone into mutual aid efforts so that folks like you and me, everyday people that, I mean, some of us here may be veterans. I would imagine most of us are not. These folks have taken up arms to defend their homeland from tyranny just over a year ago. Some of that funding has gone into making sure that they have defensive equipment so that they can defend their homeland, defend democracy there and abroad, and live to tell the tale. And I know for a fact that the work that you all have done to help me raise that money has saved at least 7 lives on the ground.
Wow.
And as I'm trying to put the actual link in the chat of the fundraiser. Other questions?
Thank you, Igor.
Thank you so much.
So much. Thank you so much. And I will make sure to send out all the information to the club as well. And Igor, you are welcome to come to every single one of our meetings.
Thank you. I forgot to end on this note in my people's native tongue and what was supposed to be my native tongue. Дякую, which means thank you, and Slava Ukraini.
Oh, thank you, Igor. Oh, my goodness, wonderful. And I will go ahead and send out the information to all members as well, and to our distro list of about 500 people. We are running a little bit behind, but if it's okay, Greg, can we stay a few minutes longer. Okay, we will not cut off any of our speakers' time. So if you can bear with us, we will get through all of this. Our next speaker, this is Ann Janks. And Ann Janks has worked as a union organizer with diverse workers under varied labor laws. And she, with her background, she is now in charge of sheriff oversight. And actually, I'm gonna have you just as long as, I apologize. We're kind of a little funky setup here. So,
So my co-conspirator is Reverend Derron Jenkins, who is on Zoom this evening. Could you, I sent a version of the county resolutions
Yes,
to put it into the
absolutely.
chat for the people on Zoom. And then Reverend Derron, if you could drop an email address into Zoom for folks who are there. And I'm going to distribute, I don't have quite enough of these, but I'm going to distribute the resolution that was passed by the county Central Committee, which you'll be shocked to hear we're going to be out there. Yeah,
Yeah, well, let me minimize it. Let me find this.
yes.
Let me just close.
Okay, well, I don't know, maybe some people left, I don't know. I know Igor already knows about it. And then, while that is all happening, we don't send emails very often, but if you want to know what's going on with your oversight, we do occasionally send out emails to keep you up to date. And
There
that's
was that one. That was from,
Buy enough time for,
yes, I apologize. I
Okay.
closed it when we were having goofiness on the camera. And I ended up closing it. So now,
so I'm gonna talk for a minute, well, until Reverend Derron can. Reverend Derron and I are both with the Coalition for Police Accountability in Oakland. Oakland has police accountability for about the last 5 years. It was voted. It was put on the ballot and 83% of the voters approved, one of the strongest oversight bodies in the country, interestingly. It might have been because we were incredibly good organizers. It also might have been because the police were never had a child rape scandal and they couldn't really fight the fight against it at that moment. Yeah, can you just, is that up on the? I want it in the chat so that they can have it.
it's up there.
Okay, but can you put the document in the chat so they can take it if they want it?
It's in an email right now. I will have to email it to my
Okay.
team.
Never mind.
I apologize.
So Reverend Derron,
Yes.
talk to us and go really fast because they've got 2 more things on their agenda.
That's okay. Take your time. We can go
Okay.
over. So you want me to share him or share this document?
Him.
Okay. So,
She's doing that, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. I'm glad to see many people out taking care of the people's business today. And I'm so thankful to see and hear our district attorney, Pamela Price. She is one of the successes of the community that we placed in office with our votes. Let me get right to the business so other speakers can have their time. It was kind of crowded over by you guys' snack table, and it took me a little time to come there home. Sheriff oversight. You think about what is sheriff oversight? Ann just shared with you the city of Oakland passed their police oversight. But let us think for a minute about oversight of a law enforcement body. Law enforcement bodies have proven time and time again that they are not able to investigate themselves. They have proven time and time again that they cover certain things up to not let the public know what's really going on. Recent things that happened across our country where the police have been involved in the murder, the beatings of citizens is atrocious. And that is not something that we want to come into Alameda County. Yes, it is true that not all police officers are bad. You have a whole lot of good working people out there that really care about the community. But there are just a few bad apples that does things out there, and it creates this flurry. So, oh, let's get rid of the police. Let us be smart and sensible about it. Sheriff Oversight will rein in our sheriff department. What it will do, because we have had over 65 deaths in the jail for this year, I believe, just in the first couple of months, where where inmates in the Santa Rita jail says that, oh, these deputies, they don't care about life in here. Where we had women who had complained about human rights issues, waking them up in the middle of the night and taking them out into the yard and standing out there with male deputies looking at them. It's atrocious. We cannot have this type of thing. We know about George Floyd. We know about Tyree Nichols. In the Memphis City Council, J.B. Smiley told the people that their civilian oversight board could not effectively operate given the powers that they were given. They didn't have enough power to subpoena people, to get the records, to call police officers forward, to question. Same thing in Minneapolis. They did not have the power. We here in Alameda County, we have the chance to create something like Oakland did to help keep our police departments honest, not to point fingers, but to let them know there are consequences for you to step out of the line of wearing that badge and gun. You have to be accountable to the community, and you have to be accountable to the people who are your supervisors, the people who are elected to supervise the county. We want an inspector general with independent legal counsel that have subpoena power, that has a bite. We're looking for a budget, at least 1% of the sheriff's department, which is literally pennies. And we want the people on this oversight board to be community-based people, not appointed by the supervisors, but going through a selection process for the community, then present it to the board of supervisors, say, here's what we have, who do you want to choose? By having all these together, we will ensure that we will have something that we can fall back on in case something wrong happens. We can help our sheriff be accountable. Last thing, Ann, the undersheriff said, oh, the new sheriff's gonna be so transparent and the oversight board won't have nothing to do. This is not about Sheriff Sanchez. It wasn't about Sheriff Ahern. It's not about the next sheriff. This is about the office of the sheriff from now until the end of Alameda County. So whoever sits in that office who have an itchy foot, they may not scratch it because there's oversight. And go ahead.
Thank you, Reverend Ron. So now I get to do the business end of things. There's kind of a loose conglomeration of people and organizations that have been working on sheriff oversight. We started under a different sheriff, as Reverend Ron mentioned. We started before two different supervisors died. We're kind of slow tracked now while things take effect, but that's okay because it gives us the time to come out and get a level of community support that's going to help focus. I have a director out here who's telling me how I have to move. That's going to help focus the supervisors on what the actual interests of the community are. One of the things that a supervisor said to us recently was that they were unsure what the voters thought about oversight of law enforcement, to which we said, well, Oakland, which is not a small portion of the county, has voted twice on oversight, both times over 80%. The county recently voted for a new sheriff. The county voted a sheriff who, by the way, in her campaign, said that she supported sheriff oversight. They recently elected a DA who has worked on oversight for many years. So I think that the voters have in fact stated it, but the supervisors are going to need to see some more. Turns out there's a little bit more education going on. So this is going to give us the time that we need to really get out into the communities and talk to as many groups as possible, get endorsements, and ensure that as elections happen, that every single time supervisors or candidates are in the field, they get asked what their position is going to be on oversight. And oversight is one of those things that everybody, even Nate Miley, says that they support. Obviously, it's about the devil being in the details, right? And is it oversight that is not only toothless, but also lacks dentures? Or is it oversight with the elements that that Derron mentioned? So I've handed out what the Democratic Central Committee passed as the resolution. We appreciate it very much. We would like it very much if you all decided to also endorse sheriff oversight with a resolution. That's our big ask. We would love to be at any events where, you know, and any other organizations that you're a part of and everything else. But our big ask is that. I also ask people to send us their emails or drop them in the chat. Reverend Derron put some contact information, and we will put you on the list to hear about oversight. We do not send many emails because we are slackers and volunteers, but we're going to get this done. So that's all that we are asking for. I'll take questions, but we really just want an endorsement. Thank you.
Yeah, Alice, you have.
Do you accept the motion to adopt this?
I would like to actually send it to all members so that everybody has a chance to see it and then put it on the agenda for a vote next month. Would that be sufficient?
I think we have a waiting period in our bylaws, maybe 7 days.
Correct. We have to make sure if we're going to vote on something, we have to put it on the agenda. So we can't vote on it tonight, but we can definitely put it on the agenda to vote next month. And I will send it to all members with that notice.
Okay, wonderful.
Any other questions? Anyone? I have a question. What if we want to check in every now and then and see how things are going? Is there some place that this will be published, or a website or something that we can see what's going on? Or
We
do need
don't
to
have a
reach out?
website, but if you give us your email address, we will let you know what's going on. We do every so often send out some information, and we kind of, you know, tailor it to the part of the county. But if you let us know who you are, I promise I won't spam you, because I actually, you know, have a job. And but, you know, give us your email address, drop it in the chat, or email Reverend Derron. He's put his in there as well.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much.
Anyone gonna step in?
And I'm gonna have Richard do this introduction for me, because I've been blowing him tonight. So Richard, you want to go ahead and.
Great. Well, thank you folks, both in person and on Zoom, for dealing with a lot of our tech things today. Thank you, Reverend Jenkins. Thank you for being here. We have one more speaker pair tonight, and thank you both so much for being so patient with us. But we have Miss Rhodesia Ransom, and Miss Barbara Sasso here. Miss Ransom is a former Tracy City Council member and current candidate for Senate District 5, which is, yes, cheer for Ms. Ransom. Senate District 5 is, as some of you may know, currently Senator Susan Eggman's district. She will be turned out in 2024.
Yeah,
Okay.
for some reason my chat, I thought I disabled it, but they're still coming through. I guess they can send to me only. So.
Sorry, Jeff. We we do see your comment. Yeah, Jackie. It was something that we were trying out this meeting, and something that we may think about or reconsider going forward. But we can see your comment, just as an FYI. But Ms. Ransom's currently running for current Senator Susan Eggman's district in 2024. And then Ms. Barbara Sasso is the, I believe, chair, correct me if I'm wrong, of the San Joaquin County Democratic Central Committee. And they're going to be here today. We're not doing an endorsement or anything, but we will want to give them some space to sort of talk about what's going on in that district, what's going on in San Joaquin County, and sort of give a preview of what may happen down the line. So both of you, please feel free to come up here and welcome our guests.
And just be careful of this cord here. So the camera is right here on my.
It might be helpful for one person to stand on that side of the cord. And
Okay, I think we'll take turns. Hi, everyone. Thank you for this invite this evening. It's great to come talk to everybody. I'd like to start off with a thank you to Tri-Valley Dems and to the Alameda Dems, because many of you have been coming out to San Joaquin County, particularly Tracy, over the last 5.5 years, I think it's been, helped us get Josh Harder elected and reelected again, which has been really terrific. That's made all the difference for us. Thank you for all that work that you've done to help us out. It's making a big difference in our county, especially now with the new district, since the entire county, except for one city, is in his district. So we're starting to see some real change, but we're struggling to elect the other candidates down ballot that Josh needs to have in office in order to really be effective. So, you know, we have some of those struggles too, as we've been working over the past, almost 6 years now since we got Josh to run. I guess the other thing too is I'd like to continue that partnership, and not just because we have to keep reelecting Josh as long as he'll run, but because we now share with new districts, we share some seats, like the Senate seat. And I think it's just really important if we can coordinate. A lot of what we've been doing in San Joaquin County, as many of you know, in Tracy, we started our GO team. It's over 6 years ago. That's our grassroots organizing team. And that's where we had coordinated campaigns. So it was about working together to elect all of our endorsed Democrats. So whether it was school board or Congress, we would go out as volunteers and support all those candidates, carry all their literature. Any individual that went out might talk about one candidate or another because they were interested in the congressional race or interested in the school board race or whatever it was. But we would coordinate that way to help maximize the resources. It's a very hard thing to do, but we did manage to do it in Tracy. And now Tracy is helping build that GO team operation across our county. We're primarily letting that happen within our clubs because we do have a club in each one of our major cities. And so those are our major population areas because we have all these islands and it's rural in between. And so we hope this is going to be effective. I think it is. It's a very heavy lift. But the last election in Stockton, we had dysfunctional is not the correct word for our school board there. I mean, they literally had 3 grand jury reports against them. The state was literally like 2 seconds from coming in and taking them over. We ran 3 people in that race for the 3 seats and we swept them. And so now we've got functional people who understand what the job is on that school board, right? But it's a lot of hard work, right? But anyways, if we can coordinate in the districts that we share now, that would just help all of us in getting people elected. Because as you know, it's often hard to get volunteers to come out to do the work. And I suspect that here in Tri-Valley Dems, or even in the county, you sort of have the same 20 people that are doing everything, right? And it gets a little exhausting. So, we struggle with those issues too. We struggle in our county with, while we're a blue county, just barely, Or I don't know what the percentage is now, but we are technically a blue county in terms of, you look at the registrations. Most of the people there, a lot of the voters, a lot of the Democrats think we're a red county. A lot of them don't vote just because they think that there's no point in it, because they don't know that, you know, their candidate could win. So we have that struggle. And then we have some really loud voices, as you guys mentioned it a couple times on social media here. We have in Tracy, we have a very strong Proud Boys group, 700 strong. In terms of their social media feed. We don't know who all those people are that are watching them, but, and we elected their founder to our city council this time, which was really kind of annoying, to say the least. But so anyways, I'm here to ask to continue this partnership we've had. Several of you, Kyoko, Mary, everybody's coming out. We're coming out every month, came out so often to help us. And if we can, whatever we can do to coordinate that way, it would be really great. That would help us, and I think it would help you. We can get the right people elected, especially to state office. And I'll let you hear from my good friend. And generally as chair for the local elections, board of supervisors on down, I generally do not make my personal endorsements known, but for state level office and otherwise, I can be independent as a delegate to the state party. And I wholeheartedly endorsed Rhodesia because I really got into this work here in detail here in California when I did end up working on her campaign for Board of Supervisors 10 years ago. And that was the first time, and what I realized and why I got more deeply involved was that I could have an impact on who ran for office, because I was so tired of always voting for the least worst candidate. And I suddenly realized that I could get people to run for office who I actually wanted to vote for. She was that first person. Anyways, I'll let you hear from Rhodesia. I really hope going forward that you folks would support her. I know we're not here asking for endorsements tonight, but I think she's terrific. Anyways,
Thank you, Barbara. All right, thanks for that. Good evening, everyone. First of all, thank you very much for the invitation to be here. I'm happy to see, I need to move over. Is that better? Okay, happy, I'm gonna put that, I don't know.
I apologize.
It feels awkward, but whatever. Happy to see familiar faces. Over the years, I've seen some of you come out to the Tracy Democratic Club to participate in our GO team, which I would like to let y'all know that the GO team started when I was elected to the city council. We decided that we did not want to wait until election time every 4 years to say, oh my God, there's an election. We need to make sure that we are staying in touch with our people in the community, making sure that we are keeping them engaged. Because although we may be a blue district, our folks tend to vote purple if we don't keep them engaged. And so as was stated, on March 6th, my birthday, I announced that I am running for state senate, representing District 5. District 5 is all of San Joaquin County and the cities of Pleasanton, Dublin, and Livermore, which now it looks like we've been practicing. So all this time that y'all been coming out to the city of Tracy to help us, it's now coming together and it's making sense. Democratically, I'd like to let y'all know that I serve on the Democratic National Committee. I was elected there. I'm also on the treasurer of the CDP Black Caucus and the chair of Emerge California, which trains and elects Democratic women to run for office. I didn't just wake up and decide to be a Democrat yesterday. I've been voting and involved in the Democratic Party since my first vote in 1992 for Bill Clinton. To some, that's going to sound like I'm really young, and to some, you didn't realize I was that old, right? How we got here today, I'm running for state senate with the support of Senator Susan Eggman, who's a dear friend and mentor. Her legacy, if you've watched her work in the state senate, has been very much about helping people improve the quality of lives. She's a social worker by trade, And I really share with her the passion for caring for people. If you know anything about me, or if you've seen anything over the years, I grew up in San Francisco working along, I'm sorry, I'm supposed to focus on the camera. Okay. Hi, y'all. I grew up in San Francisco, working alongside my grandmother. My grandmother was a missionary, and basically what that meant is, I don't know if you guys heard about drug problems, but I was drug everywhere, right? That meant that I had to, I had to go with her to church. I had to go with her when it was time to serve the community. And so what my life looked like is working with the USDA food programs and making sure that people in our community had access to food, access to mental health services, access to housing if they did not have those things. And so that is where I learned that many hands working together made for light work. And whenever someone tells me that they are a leader, I immediately look to see who people are serving, because you really cannot be a leader in our community if you're not in service to someone. So that's how I learned to lead, and that's really how I've been busy in the community. So for the past 2 decades that I've lived in San Joaquin County, my husband and I have raised 3 adult children. 2 have already graduated college. One's on her 3rd year of college. Yes, right? 3 for 3, go us, right? But for the past 20 some odd years that we've been in the county, I've really taken my heart for working in the community and brought it to San Joaquin County. 18 years ago, when we saw that kids were struggling in schools, my husband and I, we took our for-profit business and we started a nonprofit. And we funded that nonprofit out of our pockets, Sow a Seed Community Foundation, to provide mental health services to kids in school, as well as mentorship services. We work with the probation department, we work with the law enforcement, we work with the schools, we work with those families, and we make sure that young people have access to mental health care. That organization has been serving kids in our community for the last 18 years. Very proud of that effort. I've also, when we saw that homelessness was growing in the city of Tracy, it was really outrageous that we had a city where the council wouldn't do anything about it. So I ran for office with the help of Barbara and some of y'all, because some of you all were there as well, got elected and really had to, when I tell you fight, literally fought the threat of a recall election, got put on a flyer and accused of building a tent city because we wanted to do something about homelessness. When I could not get that 3rd vote on the council, I went out and got somebody elected to get on the council to help me get that 3rd vote. And we now have a homeless shelter in the city of Tracy. Because, sometimes you just got to do what you got to do to get things done. And that's really what I really believe in. Fast forward to, COVID-19 and working in our community, we had a lot of COVID deniers in our community. So it was really hard. We did the right thing. We shut the community down. I want to say it was March 13th, when we said we were going to shut down temporarily, and everybody thought it was going to be really quick. And we really did not have the capacity with a structural budget deficit that we were working with, to be able to do anything to bring testing to our community. And at that time, things were starting to spiral out of control. So I was able to bring Planned Parenthood in, and people forget that they are a federally qualified health clinic. And so I brought Planned Parenthood into our community, and we were able to stand up a COVID testing site that was in our community for almost 2 years and tested thousands of people in our community. So I'm not bragging, but I'm bragging. I'm letting y'all know that I really believe that we have to care about our community. We have to work it takes hard work to go out there and to get things done, especially in communities when people don't really believe that we should be providing things, that we should be giving a hand up. And that's really all sometimes what people need is a hand up. No one's looking for a handout, but we really have to take care of our communities. And so I really believe in that. Prior to serving on the city council, I served on our planning commission. So I really understood what was happening. And oftentimes I would be the lone vote against our housing element because there was not enough affordable housing. We weren't looking to see that we were taking care of the different levels. Only the market rate housing was getting approved. And so on the city council, I was able to fight for housing affordability because I think it's really important that my adult kids can one day live on their own, and that folks who are, now need to downsize their homes are not pushed out of their communities like we're seeing happen every single year as the Bay Area has now moved to San Joaquin, and San Joaquin's moving over to Sacramento. So I'm saying these things to say that I'm running now for state senate because I really believe that it's very important that we have people who still don't sit idle in times of need. And I hope that you can sense by the things that I'm talking about here that I don't sit idle in times of need. And it's really important that our kids have better schools. Here, kids need more schools. We need more schools for our kids. We have our water that we need to watch out for our communities to make sure that we're sustainable for years to come. We need housing affordability at all levels because we don't want to push out the middle class. We also need, to take care of the folks that are at every single level of housing. And so I'm here today to ask if you believe that we need to make sure that we have housing affordability, that we're taking care of homelessness, that we're taking care of our kids. Those are the things that I really want to make sure that we are taking care of at the state Senate. And I would be happy to have your support, happy to answer any questions. But again, I ask that you join me, Rhodesia Ransom, for State Senate District 5. Thank you.
I do want to say that we're going to invite you back to
Okay.
do a complete forum
That's
so that
fine.
we can have an endorsement. And I believe next month Ellis has scheduled your competitor who's going to give an overview next month, but we want to then have you come back
Absolutely.
and do a full forum with just you guys.
Happy to come
And
back. Did
lots
you
of
want me to answer
questions.
any questions today?
Absolutely.
Okay.
If there's any questions that you guys have at this point.
All right. Well, thank you. Oh, sir. Yeah. Hey, Ellis.
You're not getting off that easy. We had a conversation, and I asked you why you started your charity, and you spoke a little bit about that, but could you embellish that a little bit? Tell us what you were looking at. Your kids are going to school.
Yes.
And they're not getting a fair deal, and you started this charity.
Thank you. Yes, Ellis. So Ellis and I were having a conversation and he asked about Sow a Seed Community Foundation, which I talked a little bit about. And so that organization in the city of Tracy, which is where I live, we had a lot of growth happening, and the school superintendent would call my husband and I in because there was just a lot of trouble and things happening with the young kids. And what I shared is that my husband and I were really concerned. One, we both know what it was like to grow up in communities where young people were dealing with different struggles at home, and maybe there was just not enough support. But then also, we kind of came to the conclusion that these are the kids that our kids are going to probably date or marry, and they're going to school with, and these kids just don't have any support. And being able to access mentorship and being able to access mental health was so stigmatized that we really we were going into the school district so much to play mediator. And really what the kids needed was they needed support. And just seeing the kids that my kids were growing up with in such need, and just like I said, having that, knowing what it was like to be a young person and have those same, opportunities that someone could have stepped in, but they didn't, was just really important for us, and just really important that we gave these kids an opportunity. To give the opportunity to the young people. But, it was personal, and a lot of people don't know that when I say it was personal, it struck us personally. We really looked at it very organically and just decided that we would make sure that young people had access to someone. We didn't know that it was going to turn into that big of an organization or be that big of a deal because I guess we were well ahead of, what's happening now, where folks are really focusing on mentorship and mental health in schools. But it's really important that young people have an opportunity at an early age to be able to access those services. So thank you for that question, Ellis.
Thank you.
Great,
All right.
thank you.
All right. Okay, thank you all.
Thank you so much. The rest of this is going to be our regular business. I apologize, we're going over a bit. We're going to be as quick as possible. Next up is the treasurer's report. I do want to mention that this next month, we do have to change the bylaws to be in compliance with the state party. All of the members, when they count our membership, is based on members in good standing by April 25th. So we are going to be heavily pushing to get all our members, reaching out to all our past members, getting them current And I will explain that in the next meeting in detail. We're kind of running out of time here. So I'm going to turn it over to Alan. Careful of that board there.
Good evening. Took in $115 in dues. Of that, we had paid $4.55 in credit card fees. We made a $60 payment to the Alameda County Central Committee, $200 that we voted on for swing left for postcards that they're campaigning. And we had $16.08 in meeting supplies, which means we had a net loss of $165 for the month. Which leaves us a balance of $2,845 even. Okay, we have 59 members and we have 61 who haven't rejoined from last year. This compares to 72 members that we had last year at this time. So all I can ask is, please, as Jackie just said, pay your dues. If you have any questions, you can email on the website. I look at the email all the time and I'll let you know if you've paid or not.
Okay, we're gonna skip a couple of items tonight because we are running out of time. I do want to close with, again, thanking our past president, Dr. Ronald Lawrence. For those here in the room, I did make a cake for Ronald, and we are thanking him for his hard work. Lastly, I guess, I just want to cover that, again, the deadline for members to be in good standing in order to be counted towards our central committee membership count, and that drives how many representatives we can send to the convention. So that deadline's April 25th. If you have not paid your dues, please pay your dues. It's critical. It's important that we have that representation in the county. And with that, I just want to close and say thank you to all of our members and our great speakers tonight. And next time we'll have a better stand for my iPhone so that we don't lose our camera midstream. So again, thank you. Have a good evening. Stay safe.